the best coaches in the game. We really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block. Helmets, casket, and sky. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, 8th place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision. We got.
Welcome back to DFS Army Bold Call Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm at Alan Seslowski, and we have a good one for you here today, everybody. It is draft week, and I am here with Jim Conventry from Rotowire and SiriusXM Fantasy Sports. What's up, Jim?
Things are going phenomenally well. We are in draft season. 2 weeks from today, we're kicking it off, so we are ready to roll, Alan, and I am so happy to be here.
Oh my God. So if you're watching this on the audio cast, you see this big giant smile that I have on. I'm matching Jim's energy here. He's a real radio pro. Jim, how long have you been doing radio for?
The radio thing just broke last year. I started with Fantasy Guru in 2007 for 1 year, and then they did a kind of a merger, and I ended up with Draft Sharks for the next 9 years. So then I gravitate to Rotowire since 2016, and I was just doing a ton of writing, and we love writing. But actually, I kept telling them, we need to up your podcast. And they were like, we've got a better idea. Let's put you on Sirius. And I'm like, let's do it. And we have some fun.
Yeah, no, if you can hear, Jim's got that real radio voice. You see, I have that obnoxious Long Island accent still. I'm trying to get rid of it, but Jim's got that bass. He's got that timbre in his voice, that timbre. So, Jim, I had heard you on the radio for, from when you first started, and you were kind of in my peripheral. I paid attention to what you were saying. I always liked your takes on things, but I'll tell you, for me, when you really came into focus was you did, and you tell me if you remember this, over this past summer, you did 2 weeks where you filled in for Jeff and Chris while they were on vacation. And oh my God, they just unleashed you. That had to be a moment for me where I was like, right, because I listen to that show every day at 11 o'clock on Sirius, and they just wound you up and let you go. I mean, that had to be a blast for you.
It is. We're entertainers. We are knowledgeable about our craft. But at the end of the day, people want to have fun. They want to learn a little something and add to their good knowledge base. But yeah, they gave me the keys to the car and they just let me have fun. And Erickson and Liss are amazing because they've got to put out content 5 days a week, 2 hours a day on the radio. And so they're really good at sometimes just saying, okay, I've had put out so much, let's let somebody else talk a bit. So they're very gracious and just amazing stuff.
Yeah, which one did you like working with better? No, I'm only kidding. You don't have to answer that. I'm only making a joke. I'm making a joke. But yeah, you'll tell me off air. So, nice. So the reason I brought Jim on today, in addition to just loving talking to him, loving listening to him, is that this is draft week. A lot of people have their drafts this week. This is the best part of fantasy football where we build our teams, and then obviously most of them end up failing. But Jim, what is your drafting philosophy for 2020? How are you attacking drafts?
So the first thing before I get into positional talk is that you craft that big board in May and June and you get it there. And then once you've done that, you put that to the test in some low stakes drafts early. Because here's the thing, you have these really nice rankings, but then you get to your draft spot and that player is at the top of your board. And all of a sudden, I don't like that player so much in that spot, and I like somebody else. The convictions are set there, and I make the appropriate adjustments to those draft boards in June and early July. Then I can go forward, and here is my 2020 draft philosophy. So I prefer to get 2 running backs early, but there must be flexibility. I have 14 running backs. Aaron Jones is number 14. After him, I am not comfortable taking another one of those running backs in the second round of a 12-team league.
Yeah, for our purposes, we're going to talk PPR. We're going to talk 12-team leagues and 1 QB unless we specifically mention Superflex.
So, yes. So, if those running backs are off the board, I will pivot wide receiver. But I will not touch a quarterback or a tight end in those first at least 4 rounds, and we'll talk a little bit more from there. That's the general start of the strategy. What comments at this point or questions do you have before I go further?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask. You mentioned tight end. Now, so you don't play with any of the vanity tight ends. You're not interested in the vanity tight ends, not because you don't think they're good players, but it really just the value just isn't there. The opportunity cost is too great. I've heard you say that a couple times.
I call them luxury picks. I notice in a roster construct where people will take the tight end at the top, be it Kittle or Kelsey, or they take Lamar Jackson or Mahomes early. I look at the roster constructs and I just don't like the way those teams flesh out. And I can't put myself in that dilemma. I need to stockpile my running backs and receivers. Now, I want George Kittle when I got him 2 years ago. Last year, I liked people like Darren Waller late. I want to find this year's breakout guy in a later round and maybe take two of them. And if I do and one of them hits, we're gold.
All right. Well, tell us, who's that guy that you're targeting this year at tight end that's super late?
Super late, Ian Thomas.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah,
go.
Yeah,
no, I'm listening. I'll go right out.
I was just saying, like Ian Thomas, because guys like you, guys like me, we've been drafting, doing best ball since March, and he was like a popular guy in March, and then nobody has talked about Ian Thomas in the last 3 months. So give me the Ian Thomas, why we should take him in every double-digit round draft that we have.
So in 2018, he's a later round draft pick in the NFL draft, and we know tight ends in the hit rate, it's horrible when you're picked later. However, Greg Olson gets hurt. And down the stretch, he's putting up 50-yard games almost every contest as a fifth or sixth round rookie. So to me, he was on the map. And then last year, people were on him a bit, assuming Greg Olson would get hurt. And of course, Olson plays pretty much the whole season. But that's the benefit to us. The offense that is now in Carolina is perfect for Ian Thomas. Teddy Bridgewater in the new Brady offense, Joe Brady, they're going to get that ball out quickly, and DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey. But the biggest player on the field for them by far is Ian Thomas, because everybody else is small. Robbie Anderson's a string bean. Curtis Samuel's a little guy. Yes. And so Ian Thomas is going to be a massive factor. And imagine in the red zone, when they're drawing up plays, it's really tough to get the ball to the tiny players. But Ian Thomas is going to be a loaded option there. So, yes, the system is perfect. The opportunity, the talent is there. He is going as tight end 20. I like him at tight end 12 or 13. Sign me up all day long because I think the upside is tight end 6 or 7.
So, Jim's on the radio. Are you doing every Friday now?
So right now it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's what it's been throughout August. Yes.
Yeah. So I heard you talk about Ian Thomas, and I was like, oh my God, I was out on him. And then I have to realize to myself and that the players that I'm out on, I'm going to be wrong on them because I'm going to be wrong on the players that I'm right on. So then I wrote his name down. I was like, okay, so this is what I love about Jim. He wind him up. He's passionate about the players. We're going to talk about another example. What I teased to the DFS Army was everybody was all excited about the Deandre Washington. And then we get the news, we're talking about the Chiefs backfield, that it's not him, it's Daryl Williams, and now everyone's taking him late. And basically, word came out that Deandre Washington is not even going to make the team. So I was operating on that assumption. Talk about a little bit what you talked about on Friday with Joe on the air and your take on who is the Chiefs running backup to own.
Yes, this background noise in the preseason is just tiring. And we kind of know what Daryl Williams is. Yes, he has a little bit of a story over the length of his career maybe to tell, but we know that he was not a preferred option. They used him when they had to. Deandre Washington was brought in for a purpose. He played in college with Patrick Mahomes. The discussion was between Washington and Mahomes when Washington was deciding to play there. And Mahomes told the coaching staff he feels Washington's a great fit. Washington signs there. Andy Reid is not going to bring in a player who, especially when he has other bodies, and he had a lot of running backs in that depth chart. There are plans for Deandre Washington, and he is a good player. He is not a stiff. And so when he gets in there, he is going to be used in relief, but both as a between the tackles runner and as a receiver when Edwards-Helaire needs a breather. And I am so glad the fantasy community is now off of Washington, because in those few leagues where I might get Edwards-Helaire, give me Washington again. That's an easy one.
He, in an important league that I just drafted with on 2 days ago, he's sitting on the waiver wire. I already put in a claim for him tonight. So, I mean, right after I was listening to your replay, I woke up early this morning and I played that Friday show. I was like, "Oop, okay, there we go." See, this is what I was talking about, DFSR. Isn't this fun? You get a real radio guy with good takes and actionable intel. This is exactly why I wanted to have Jim on. All right, here we go. I got another situation for you now. By the way, you know what I didn't ask you in the beginning? I'm sorry that I'm a little disorganized here, Jim, but what is your favorite format to play? Are you more of a redraft person? Do you prefer Dynasty? I mean, we all love best ball. What is your preferred format?
Because of working in the industry, and I'm just so busy all the time, I'll play a number of redraft. Dynasty is too much work. I've got people that I got to create content for. And I know a lot of people out there are great with, a gazillion leagues. I'll play my industry leagues redraft. I have one Dynasty league, and that's as far as I'm going. Our best ball leagues are great because the maintenance isn't there week to week. Like I said, there are people I want to give information to, and I'm grinding film during the regular season. I'm making sure I hit every snap of every game so I can give people, as you say, actionable advice based on formations that are being used, how players are being deployed, because I want that free agent pickup a couple of weeks before he's relevant. I don't want it when everybody's sitting on the waiver wire, having him as a number one option.
Yeah, no, that's so key. That's an underrated waiver wire strategy, getting the $0, the $1 guy before he becomes an all-in fab play. So, you should follow Jim on Twitter. It's at Jim Conventry NFL, right, Jim? That's your Twitter?
Yes.
He does lives all the time, like unannounced. He'll just go live and he'll give you like 3 or 4 quick tips. So at Jim Conventry NFL, he's a great follow. And again, he'll be that secret weapon in your league. He's that secret weapon for me. One of the most common questions I get, Jim, is who are the analysts or the podcasts that I, do a check with, and who do I listen to? And, those are the people that I'm having on my podcast and you're one of those guys. You're my sanity check for a lot of stuff. I've had Byron Lambert from Roster Watch on here. I've had Dalton Del Don, and all you guys together. It's like almost like borrowing from brilliance. I've had, so that's another term that I stole from a guy named Kevin O'Brien. And that's really what I put together. Okay. So Deandre Washington. Now here's another one that I thought was very unique to you. You were the guy yelling in 2018, "Don't trust the Rams" in 19. Take it away, Jim.
Oh my gosh. So it was basically that mid-season game when the Bears Sunday night played the Rams, and Vic Fangio completely sniffed out that offensive system that McVay rolled out. It was 97% 11 personnel, 3 receivers on the field. They ran outside zone. Well, Fangio's like, "Oh, that's easy. I'll put my 2 defensive ends outside the box and I will jam the receivers at the line." And the Rams didn't know what to do. And then I really want to make some people some money for the Super Bowl. And I'm like, well, Bill Belichick knows that game plan and he's going to take it. And the Rams are going to be scoring many points. And they scored 3. But the whole thing going into 2019 was, well, the blueprint's out there and everybody watches the Super Bowl. So guess what's going to happen? Last year, well, teams took it away. I also qualified it, though, saying McVay will learn if he's a genius, because a genius, it's cool if you get it right once, but it's what's your counterpunch. And I said at that point, his counterpunch is going to 12 personnel. And he actually did that. But it was painful. Yeah, it was painful to watch because he knew his offense was figured out and he waited too late to make the change because they could have made the playoffs.
Yeah, no, you said it right. And then what did they do? They had success with 12 personnel. And so just speaking of that, we were talking about tight end game. Tyler Higbee had that epic run. Are you just as a lightning answer, then I have a follow-up question. In or out on Tyler Higbee at a 7th round ADP?
Out, and I'm very passionate about it.
Okay, because I've heard smart analysts and give good rationale why they think he's the most underpriced asset in all of fantasy with that epic run. Tell me why we should not draft Tyler Higbee at ADP.
Yes, so he has 5 games down the stretch, averaging 100 yards, and 4 of those games were over 100 yards. Here was the deal. 4 of those games, they played defenses that were the 29th or worst against the tight end. The one game they played the 49ers, they were without Jaquaski Tart, their safety, and they were without Quan Alexander, their linebacker, so they were missing important coverage components of their defense against the tight end. Well, Sean McVay in those games peppered the tight end position with targets. Earlier in the season, when Gerald Everett was actually healthy, he had the same scenario against one of those bad defenses, and Everett had 136 yards on 7 catches. So the blueprint was out. When McVay sees a defense that can't defend a position, he pounds away at it. So Tyler Higbee, it wasn't this insane breakout. It was basically he was seeing double-digit targets against defenses that couldn't cover. Therefore, that was the end result. Now, Gerald Everett blows away Higbee in athleticism. The measurables aren't close. Matter of fact, when Gerald Everett gets drafted, it's supposed to be the new Jordan Reed from McVay, and that athleticism is still there. Higbee's more of a blocker and a sub-athlete. So this year, Everett wasn't benched last year. He was still hurt. He was active, but he wasn't ready to play. So at the worst case scenario, they're splitting targets. Very worst. Best case scenario for me is Everett goes back to being the lead, but there is no way that Tyler Higbee is the lead receiving tight end with a healthy Gerald Everett.
So you're all in on Gerald Everett as a life preserver late round tight end in a deeper bench.
Because I'm going for Ian Thomas late, and the hedge here is this. It's that Everett may split snaps or split targets with Higbee. So that lowers both of their upside. So Higbee can't meet that lofty ADP because he's not getting the 11 targets. But I think Everett may also get cannibalized where they each get 5 or 6 targets, catching 3 of them, and both of them take a hit. And remember, they're not going to be playing those bottom feeder defenses. They ran into that incredible stretch of opponents. This year, they're going to see the ups and downs. And when they see a tougher opponent, they're not going to be seeing many of those targets because McVay will game plan accordingly.
So then where does that leave the Rams wide receivers? I mean, they basically Cooper Kupp, let's just call him generously a 4th round pick. He sometimes goes in the 3rd, and Robert Woods shortly after. Are you in or out on those guys?
Woods absolutely blew up when they went to the 2 tight end offense. He was posting 100-yard games in the majority of those second half contests because he was the lead receiver, not in a 3 receiver set, and they weren't using that pre-snap motion the way they did. And so basically it was a comfort level between Jared Goff and Woods. You see, Woods is very adept at running both in-breaking and out-breaking routes, but they're not the ones across the field. They're more like near the hash on the perimeter. Well, he is a perfect fit for Jared Goff, and that comfort is there. So he blew up, and he will continue that. Cooper Kupp was very touchdown dependent down the stretch. He saw his yardage totals, except for week 17. In the second half, he did not top 65 yards in a game after putting up 400-yard games in the first half, including like a 225.
So who's your favorite? You talked about you were attacking running backs early. Who's your favorite wide receiver target in the 3rd round?
So the players I like, and I'm looking at my board as we're talking here, I love Odell Beckham. That's the one that I really have my eye on.
I love that. Well, you know what it is? It's like he's the only guy in that whole round that could finish as the wide receiver 1, not a wide receiver 1.
Alan, you are 100% correct on that. And the thing I like about the offense right now, see, last year, the Cleveland coaching staff was irresponsible. In 2018, when Baker Mayfield broke onto the scene, Freddie Kitchens was the coordinator, and he was running heavier personnel, extra tight end on the field, and Mayfield was throwing against light secondaries, and he threw 27 touchdowns, and he did have interceptions, I think, were double digits, but he was very good. Well, they bring in Todd Monken as the OC last year. And here was the problem. Kitchens is calling plays, but they're using Monken's offense, which was 3 wide receivers, so 11 personnel. Their offensive line was atrocious. So not only was Baker Mayfield seeing extra defensive backs, but he was also seeing pressure because of the formations they were in. And so he was put in a worst case scenario. Well, now this year, they add 2 tackles, the 10th or 11th pick in the draft, Jedrick Wills, and they pick up Jack Conklin. They sign Austin Hooper at tight end, draft Harrison Bryant. They bring in a fullback, Andy Janovich, and Kevin Stefanski is the coach. This has been set up from a GM spot to a coaching spot to give Mayfield optimal situations against light secondaries that Odell Beckham is going to torch week after week.
What a treat this is, DFS Army. Look at this. We have, for those of you watching live and or hearing this on the re-record, I'm here with Jim Conventry at Jim Conventry NFL, best known for his Friday, Saturday, and Sunday show on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Channel, and of course, does some amazing writing over at Rotowire. And I want to talk about one of your recent articles. All right. So first, I was told that Sony Michel is one of the best values back in March. You know what? And it was true. He was an 8th rounder, and he was a starting running back on a team with Jared Stidham as the quarterback. They were presumably going to run more. Then Sony does what Sony does. He goes and gets foot surgery in May. And Damian Harris, logically so, 3rd round pick. Here we go. It's Damian Harris. It's Sony Michel is back. Jim, talk about your article and who am I drafting, if any, and what price should I be paying for a running back in New England?
So one of my primary concerns with the Patriots is they lost a lot of their defensive personnel. It was gutted. And then opt-outs. Not only was it free agent losses, but opt-outs. They have a great secondary, but their front seven is in shambles. And this is the COVID camp. They are not getting reps together. Teams are going to move the ball on the Patriots. The Patriots are going to be trailing. This is not the LeGarrette Blount years where he's getting all those carries, grinding out wins. This is a team that's going to be scratching for their lives. Player I like, very, very late in drafts, Rex Burkhead. You see, Rex Burkhead has proven. I know.
I mean, it's, you know what? I could totally see it. That's why I'm laughing. So go ahead.
And it's end of the draft, right? It totally end of the draft. But Rex Burkhead can block. He can line up in the slot. He can run between the tackles. Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels, they do not want to have to tip their play off at the line. By having personnel, they don't want, oh, this guy's in, it's a run. Oh, James White, and it's a pass. When Brady was there, it was different because Brady could audible at the line and Brady could see what the defense was going to do. Cam Newton's a super quarterback, but nobody's Tom Brady. And so now Rex Burkhead, for a team that's going to be trailing, gives them the versatility. James White's not a runner. He's a receiver. And I understand people are just extrapolating the targets and saying White's going to be that guy. But here's the problem. Tom Brady, with a lot of those connections to White, it was pre-snap read. They were on the same page. It was years and years of chemistry.
Yeah, those guys could like finish each other's sentences. You know, it's unbelievable.
Yes. And so that's not going to be there with Cam and him, not that quick. But Burkhead, again, gives him that versatility. So I think for an end game pick, and if it doesn't work, you cut him. But there are going to be games this year, especially in best ball, where Rex Burkhead is relevant. The other running backs, it's going to be mishmash, mix and match, but it's not going to be as good as the old days because they're not going to be grinding out double-digit victories.
If you're looking for that RB4 or RB5, is Damian Harris an option for you in like the 11th round, 12th round, or no?
At that point in the draft, yes. If you need, because sometimes you just need floor. Floor is okay. It's okay because Damian Harris should get carries. And even if he gets 12 to 15 carries, now they lose their offensive line coach, Dante Scarnecchia. That's a huge loss. He's an amazing coach. And maybe a second year gone, but that's when it hits. So first year, they remember a lot of what you coached. Scarnecchia is gone. And they also have issues on that line with some personnel, but Damian Harris is still going to get some work. And there are games the Patriots are going to be okay with the lead. Damian Harris will have some good, solid floor weeks for you. And I think that's what you like. You're not going to see the 30-point blow-up games, but there's something that's okay about getting 8 to 10 points on a given week when you need it.
Okay, I'm here with Jim Conventry at Jim Conventry NFL, and we are talking about everything you need to know heading into draft week here. Now, Jim, you're a big Chicago Bears fan, is that right?
So I live in Chicago, but honestly, all teams are like one of 32 to me. It's that after I had done this industry work for a number of years, not even long, a couple of years, it was like the emotion fell away. I always wondered growing up how announcers could be unbiased. And then when I got in the industry, I'm like, oh, you just naturally become a fan of the game. So the Bears, I know all 32 teams extremely well, and the Bears are just one of those.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because, it's just is some of the stuff I've been doing in the industry and not, just starting out and just full-time hobbyist, but I lost it. I'm always like, I just love football. I love fantasy. Yeah, sure. I'm still a Jet fan at heart, and now I'm living in Jacksonville. So of course, you root for the Jaguars, but you're absolutely right. You just become a fan. You'll watch any game you'll analyze it no matter what. So the reason I asked you about that is I wanted to know about David Montgomery. What do we do? He was routinely going in the 5th round as I guess I'll take him. Nobody was really excited to take him. What round should he be going in now with his injury? And what could you tell us about his injury?
So the injury, they won't give us specifics, 2 to 4 weeks. And that's kind of where the number's at. It's a groin injury. It's one that could have a setback. But here's the biggest problem. The Bears had one of the bottom 5 offensive lines last year, and they did nothing to improve it. The problem was Montgomery, I thought, was elusive. He would get hit, though, behind the line of scrimmage frequently, and he might make that guy miss. But by the time he got going again, somebody was there to clean up. Montgomery never had a chance. So now, with nothing improved, and defenses do not respect the Bears' passing game, so they will consistently see bodies in the box, and they don't use Montgomery much as a receiver. So I personally would rather have DeAndre Swift, even though he's hurt now, a little bit later. Like, you can get him in the 5th round, and with his current injury, DeAndre Swift, he's falling to the 6th and sometimes the 7th in the last couple days. And so give me that, because even if he misses a little time, I think that's a 3-down back in a good offense with a good quarterback. So Montgomery, if you have to take him, 6th round, but try to get DeAndre Swift instead.
You're still in on Montgomery at the 6th round. I mean, he dropped all the way to like the 9th or 10th in a draft I was in the other day.
Yes, the injury will scare a lot of people off. Now, high stakes league or no high stakes league?
Like $100. So it was like casual, but people that know what they're doing.
Yeah, so that's good. So yeah, right, different drafts, these injuries scare people off, and when there's skin in the game, people will completely devalue these players. But with Montgomery, if he can play, let's even say 15 games. He's going to get 220 or so carries, 240 if he plays the full season, probably right around there. And he's going to give you a reliable floor. But he's going to have a lot of those weeks where he's 45 yards and they're not going to get in the red zone a lot. And so, again, a floor play maybe. But I think there are other running backs in that spot of the draft as I look at my chart here. You know what? I mean, honestly, I would rather go with J.K. Dobbins. I would rather go with DeAndre Swift. I don't see Montgomery having real upside in this offense, and that's where I struggle. You see, the upside plays for me are from that 4th to 9th round. That's where I'm looking for guys to put the hammer on people.
Yeah, now that makes sense. And you also in the recent the experts draft that you participated in, I saw you took David Johnson in round. Was it 4? You took him in round 4?
Yes, round 4.
Okay, so he's been someone that I've been avoiding. I mean, for all the obvious reasons, but I don't like to shut anyone out. Usually in that area, I'm shopping for wide receivers. That Calvin Ridley cluster. I don't even want to call it a tier because it's like Sutton, it's like Shark, it's all of them, and I can't even rank them. They're just a cluster. So what? I guess the obvious is that Bill O'Brien is going to want to prove. I mean, we've heard that narrative all offseason. He's going to want to prove that he made a good trade. But if he uses him like he used Carlos Hyde and just runs him up the gut, that's not optimal. Where's your confidence level in David Johnson? Because I thought everyone would be anti-David Johnson. There's a real David Johnson is going to be fine hive going on out there.
So it is tough to count on Bill O'Brien, right? Well, we do know this about David Johnson. In the first 6 weeks before he hurt his back last year, he was averaging 20 PPR points per game. He had one bad game, and it was an 8.8, which is not a terrible fantasy game, and that was against the Ravens. So now he wasn't great as a runner because the offensive line was bad, and like you said, they were running him up the middle too much. That's not optimal for David Johnson. But yet, as a receiver, he's top shelf still. And those 20 fantasy points per game, that's a difficult number to hit, over 6 weeks. Well, Desean Watson, I know, doesn't look to check down a lot. He likes to extend the play and throw downfield. But David Johnson is a completely different weapon than what he's had. He does have wide receiver type skills. And so there will be designed passes to him. I hope O'Brien, because he has a good line, I hope he's smart enough to get David Johnson to the outside, because once he gets to the outside, he is a stud. If they run him up the middle, it's problematic. Now, I took him in the 4th round of that draft because basically by that point, running backs were gone, And I didn't even like the running backs in the second and third, which is why I went 2 wide receivers. And
you had said that Aaron Jones was your cut line for the RB1 potentials. Who's your cut line for? Okay, at least I could know that I could play them every week without problem. Like the set and forget it guys.
So the whole area of that draft is sketchy, and I have players in a tier, and it's 7 or 8 names. For the sake of just I'm going to rattle them off. So it's Fournette, Jonathan Taylor, David Johnson, Lev Bell, Mel Gordon, Gurley, Chris Carson, and James Conner. I have them all in one tier because each of those players has significant warts to their game. But if I can't get 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds, I have to end up with one of them because I don't see that there are a whole lot of running back 2s afterwards. Raheem Mostert's in that group as well. I forgot to add him in there, but that's the group.
One of my favorite exercises in fantasy football is to look back at the previous year's ADP. What were we thinking a year ago? And James Conner was a fringe first rounder in the NFFC. I mean, I think he was going anywhere from like pick 11 to 14. Not much has changed. I mean, they have a 4th round rookie and they have Benny Snell, who's now all of a sudden the best backup in the history of the NFL lately, right? Why is he in your group with warts? Is it because of the injury history or is there some performance thing that you saw?
So he has, and I'm trying to get this number off the top of my head. I think it's like 6th percentile agility, which, yes.
That would describe you and me.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And I might have 7th on a good day, right? But the problem is James Conner is a straight line runner. And he is a big punishing runner, but we've learned in his short career, he does not handle the contact well because he gets injured easily. If he could make people miss, I would think he could avoid injury. But when you're just a sledgehammer running into people and you get hurt, I don't see a scenario where you don't get hurt. And here's another problem and why I was off him last year. A huge loss for the Steelers going into last year was offensive line coach Mike Munchak. He had them as a top 5 unit for years. Last year, outside the top 10, another year gone, and Ramon Foster retires. Big part of that line. That line is going to be about league average at best. And I think just like when Le'Veon Bell was a Steeler and when James Conner was doing well, it was under the premise that the Steelers had an elite offensive line. They don't.
All right, we're going to play a little game now, Jim. You up for a game? It's
always
called,
up for a game.
That's right, baby. It's called In or Out. Are you in or are you out? So I'm going to name a player. I'm going to go about 5 or 6 of them, and you're going to tell me at ADP if you're in or out. I'll give you just an approximate ADP. I know that it fluctuates. Okay. Le'Veon Bell, late 4th round.
Out.
Iggs, 5th round, 6th round.
You faded out for a second. Give me that name again.
Okay. Stephon Diggs.
Out.
Okay. Why are you out on Diggs?
Because he is a precise route runner and Josh Allen is not a precise thrower. I don't see that being a good match. Also, they have 3 receivers, and this is a team that's going to win with defense and running. I don't see there being enough pass attempts, and with 3 receivers involved, out.
Okay. Cortland Sutton as an early 5th round pick.
Out.
Wow. John, I mean, this is why I love having you on. You have these definitive takes. Jonathan Taylor as a late 3rd round RB3 for a team that went RB.
In.
Right. And I'm exactly the opposite for a team that went wide receiver. I'm passing on him there. So I love that. Let's see. The Broncos RBs, Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay at ADP. So that's about like late 3rd and 9th round.
Gordon out, Lindsay in.
See, I agree. Those ADP should be more like 5th round and 7th round, right?
Yep, exactly.
Cool. All right. There's that. We talked about it a little bit earlier. And by the way, I'm here with Jim Conventry at Jim Conventry NFL of SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Channel and over at Rotowire. You can find all his work over there. I highly recommend DFS Army. Go check him out. He is one of the analysts that I love listening to. I love reading. And Jim, you're pretty heavy into the DFS, right? You enjoy DFS? Do you play?
I do.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the DFS Army. So you know that's our bread and butter. The season long content that I'm providing here, and the dynasty stuff is building. But the bread and butter is DFS. So what is your? You won a national contest? I know it was before the DFS days, but
yes.
And we'll get to that. But what is your overall philosophy for DFS, game selection wise and roster build wise?
So Again, it depends. Are you playing 50-50s? Are you playing GPPs? And which one do you want me to focus on?
I want you to focus on, I like to put in like $5 and win like 10 million bucks.
Yes. So basically, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get 2 to 3 players that the field is off of. And you have to, they're going to be variance players because you've got to have differentiation if you want to make money. But you have to have that core of the lineup. That core of the lineup may match up with a lot of the chalk at times. And that's so one area is you've got to have a base of points first. And then you need a few hammers to put you over the top. And those hammers are going to come up zeros a lot of the time. Those lineups should often finish bottom 10% or top 10%. You don't want those lineups that are finishing safe in the middle because there's no money in the middle of these. And in terms of stacking games, you've got to be careful there as well, because in the games that are the high points per games, most of the field is on those games. And then there's a segment of the DFS population that targets the lowest total to think they're going to differentiate that way. So if I'm going to take a stack game, I'm going to find one that's in the middle ground that people are kind of lukewarm on and kind of hit there. But again, it's having those 2 or 3 differentiation players that will give you the chance to go into overdrive and make some money.
Who's your week 1 all-in play on a full PPR site?
It's always Odell Beckham because he's playing the Ravens, and nobody's going to want to play him against the Ravens because they're going to think the Ravens are going to shut him down. And I believe the game's in Baltimore. I haven't looked at it in a few days.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that's one where people, after last year, I think people have that sour taste, and I think Odell Beckham is going to smash them.
Wow, Jim, we already here for 35 minutes. I could talk to you for another 3 hours and 35 minutes, but I know you're going to do some radio later today, so I'll have some endgame questions for you. This is a little bit off the rails, just some questions I jotted down. And so you live in Chicago. The obvious question is, what's the best pizza in Chicago?
Lou Malnati's.
Is that the Chicago style, or is it more traditional?
It's called gourmet pizza in the pan. So it's pan pizza. They have locations throughout the city. They branched out into the suburbs. I was so happy about that because there's one within 10 minutes of my house. But it is one of the traditional staples of Chicago pizza.
Yum. What's the restaurant that was featured on The League all the time? Though it's like what's the main? It's like a steakhouse. I remember I went there and it was
Gibson's.
Awesome. Gibson's. Yeah, that place delivers, man. Even though it's like, it's almost like a very touristy thing. I enjoyed that for a good steak and a martini. All right. What was the first car you ever owned?
A Grand Am, Chevy Grand Am.
What year?
87.
What color?
Maroon.
I had a 2-tone Ford Fairmount, 1980. Man, the only way it started was when you put a pencil in the carburetor. So, yep. All right, worst job you ever had. Think back to when you were a kid. Some sort of
White Castle.
Oh, that seems like good. You would eat all the food.
I did. They charged you off your paycheck $0.25 a day. You could eat before your shift, on your break, and after your shift. And I ate. And that was probably not a good thing.
White Castle, I remember that being like, oh my God, the greatest thing. And then there was a point in like your late 20s or 30s where you're just like, it just doesn't make you feel right inside. It feels like it's eating your insides, and you stop eating White Castle. For those of you who don't know what White Castle is, it's like Crystal Burger for you Southerners out there. Crystal Burger is the other mini burger thing. Okay, childhood, last one for you. Childhood scary movie that you saw when you were a kid that still terrifies you today.
The Exorcist.
Good one. Mine is The Shining.
Oh, yes. That's a great one, Alan.
Yeah, I can't. All right. I'm here with Jim Conventry at Jim Conventry NFL. Find him on Sirius Satellite Radio Channel 87, right? That's what
Yes.
It's on weekends. What time are you on the weekends, Jim?
So on Fridays, Central Time, we're on 11 to 1. And
so that's 12 to 2. East, right?
Eastern. So let's try to do the Eastern extrapolation. 1 to 3 Saturdays and Sundays. However, we typically lose our Sunday spot once week 1 hits because they do NFL game coverage.
Yep. Okay. Anything else that where the people could find you other than Twitter?
That's really it. I work at Rotowire, but really they have me doing a lot more media. I do training camp notes, which are up for free every Saturday and Sunday. So they're not on the paywall. So you could read training camp reports, and on those, basically I take the news of the day and I give you the fantasy spin for each player of what to expect. And but like I said, they have me more in the media end these days, which is great. And I'll be doing live streams throughout the season, get you ready for each of the week's games, highlights of DFS stuff. You guys do better than I do at that, but I give it my best shot.
Yeah, last year DFS Army had $1 million winner. So that is our, this guy Bobby Wow, he hit on FanDuel the $1 million, and it's just like it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. So obviously everyone at the DFS Army was a proud papa. Actually, 2 more questions I have for you. Who's one guy? Now you talked about Ian Thomas, but who's one player you're not leaving any of your redrafts without?
The problem is I can't get him all the time. DJ Chark's one of those guys. Love to get him. He's often somebody's higher on him than I am. If Marquise Hollywood Brown, he's a guy that I like to get out of drafts with. But the one I can always get late in the draft, and nobody seems to be on him, is Darius Slayton. What I like about Slayton is this. People see him as a situational deep threat. He also has 55th percentile agility, which for a deep threat guy is a very good number. And he was a 5th-round draft pick last year. So nothing was expected of him. I think there's a massive year 2 jump, and I believe he could be an alpha-type receiver in that offense. And I see a big jump for him. And one more, Christian Kirk.
Oh, so you're on Kirk. All right. So yeah, I just didn't like what I've seen from him the last couple of years. But again, I always explore the possibility. If I hate a guy, I'm going to be wrong about some of them. So, all right. So Christian Kirk, I have a couple drafts. Maybe I'll dip into a little Kirk. There's 2 more. 2 more questions. You got time for me for 2 more?
I have as much time as you need. I got plenty of time. My show isn't for almost an hour. So
okay, 2 more questions. So who's a player outside of the top 2 rounds, outside of the top 24, that you think is a lock to be a 1st-round pick next year?
Oh man, that's an on the spot when I'm trying to think here. I'm outside the top 20. Oh, AJ Brown's not. He's out. He's in the top 24, I think, these days.
Oh no, he's like in the 30s. He's in the 30s.
AJ Brown, and I love talking about AJ Brown. When I watch him play, I've called him Terrell Owens 2.0. When the ball's in his hands, he can run around you, through you, or over you, and he sees light secondaries because of Derrick Henry. Love AJ Brown.
Yeah. Okay. So, it's funny because AJ Brown, someone loves AJ Brown every draft, and I'm having to reach for him now to try to get him. And, you don't want to reach into the 2nd round, although he's probably worth it, like you just said. All right. So this is the Bold Call podcast. So any guest that comes on here is responsible for making a bold call. And what we define a bold call is an 80th percentile outcome. Pick a player, and if everything goes right, last year, so I got a lot of bold calls wrong, but my one bold call that I got right was that I said Lamar Jackson would finish as the QB1. And I know some other people had that bold call too, but that was an 80th percentile outcome. Everything went right. Who is Jim Coventry's player that if everything goes right, who is it and what happens?
J.K. Dobbins. And the reason I like J.K. Dobbins is I feel, and I'm going to talk a minute if you don't mind here.
Oh no, please do. But tell me what the outcome is first. What's
the outcome is top 3 running back. That's the outcome.
That's your bold call. All right.
That's my bold call. Top 3 running back. And here's how it happens. So last year, Mark Ingram gets a really nice 5 yards per carry, and everybody's like, "Wow, he had a good season." A good running back facing light boxes, as they did in most of their games, with a mobile quarterback like Lamar Jackson. If you're not getting 5.5 yards per carry in that situation, you're not a good running back. He's over 30, he'll be 31 this year. And once they see J.K. Dobbins in that lineup and they see how much more he is getting on a typical rush attempt over Ingram, Ingram is going to be moved into a deep 2nd place, and Dobbins is going to be insanely good. And by the time week 3 or 4 hits, every week you'll be able to bank on him. That's my call. Yeah,
that's a good one. That's a good one. You know what? I think that's going to be our video clip that we promote this podcast with, the J.K. Dobbins bold call. Yeah. All right, everybody. We're here with Jim Conventry. You can find him, like I said, every weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, up until Sundays, up until game day starts, but he'll be there on the weekend for you. Listen to him. Oh, you know what, Jim, who's the analyst or podcast that you listen to, that you either grew up listening to on regular radio? Who are some of the broadcasters that you admire in sports in general?
So Sigmund Bloom from Football Guys.
He's awesome, isn't he?
He is. And he's an amazing human being. And actually, Bob Harris, and I think they're related. I think they're either cousins or one's a nephew to another. And Bob Harris, and I know he hadn't done a lot of podcasts, but he's on Football Diehards now, and he's an OG as well. And he's another person, very knowledgeable, but they are just even better human beings. And I tell you what, somebody I learn a lot from all the time is Matt Kelly, the Podfather.
Yeah, no, all good picks there. Actually, Bob Harris. So I do another podcast with a couple guys. We call ourselves the Flex Network, and Bob is going to be on the Flex Network pod with those two guys that I do it with. So yeah, no, he's awesome. So as you know, you're one of those guys. Chris Liss is one of those guys. Jeff Erickson, Dalton. I love the guys from Roster Watch with all their rookie analysis. So it's just, there's so many great analysts out there. It's like I could listen to the podcast all day, and that's pretty much what I do if I'm taking a bike ride or whatever. So thank you for all the entertainment you provided to me. You are in my ear as one of the guys that I listen to, and I'm glad that we connected and that I can now call you one of my social media Twitter friends. I'm proud to do that.
That means a lot to me. I love what you guys are doing at the DFS Army. I am excited to follow you guys because I have a lot to learn about DFS. I'm really good at film and understanding season long, but I have a long way to go. And it's people like you who could get me to the next level. So I'm very excited.
Awesome. I'll have to bring you back on, sometime this season with my normal broadcasting partner, The Geek, because he is the brains of the operation when it comes to DFS. I learn from them. And like I said, I provide some of the season long and dynasty content, but you are right to identify DFS Army as a hot source. So, all right. I am Alan Seslowski. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm here with my new friend, Jim Conventry, who I love talking to. Until next time, DFS Army, well, take care. We'll be back next week with another episode.
Got the best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets, casket, and top.